This is episode 74 of Outlander Cast with Mary and Blake. All the way from Cranston, Rhode Island, welcome to Outlander Cast. It's a podcast dedicated to the show Outlander on Stars.
Sing me a song of a lass that is gone. Say, could that lass be I? Mary of soul, she sailed on a day over the sea to
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm your host, Mary Larson.
My name's Blake, and I wish I had as cool of an accent as Scott Kyle.
You do have a great accent, though, Blake.
No, but it's different. It's different. Like this, I feel like this is more annoying.
You know that he's not going to his wife right now being like, oh, you know what? I wish I talked like this guy from Boston.
Yeah, no, I don't think he does that. As a matter of fact, I don't think anybody ever does that. They just were like, okay, that sounds really lame, dude. Just stop talking.
It's a great accent to mimic, though, the Bostonian accent.
If you can do it right, unless you're Benedict Cumberbatch, when you can't do it. That poor thing.
Poor thing. A for effort. God. We should have had Scott try to do a Boston accent.
That would have been a really good idea. Why didn't I think about that?
I don't know.
Maybe because
we were just so in love with Scott Kyle. Okay, so Scott Kyle, of course, is our interview for today. And guys, hold on to your butts, as they say in Jurassic Park. You know I love Jurassic.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
Because this is a dynamite episode. I mean, seriously, guys, our babysitter upstairs, because I told you in the last episode we always hired a babysitter. Our babysitter upstairs, after the interview, she said, "What was going on? I heard you and Blake laughing so much, and you guys have a soundproof studio." And I said, "It's Scott Kyle. He is so great, so gracious, so funny. So make sure you listen to the very end of this episode. He shares some wonderful insight and some great stories that hopefully have you laughing along with us."
Yeah, I can't. It must have been hard for the listener eventually to listen to me cackle.
People love your laugh, generally.
Generally. So, all right, my love, you ready to get into it and to stop wasting everybody's time?
Of course I am. Let's get to Scott.
Let's do it.
This episode of Outlander Cast with Mary and Blake is sponsored by The Gathering in Cologne, Germany, which is held on March 10th through 12th in 2017. At this event, you can see various actors of the show Outlander, like Grant O'Rourke, Stephen Walters, Stephen Cree, Andrew Gower, Lawrence Dobies, and Scott Kyle. They're going to be attending this event in Cologne, Germany to meet their fans. After a successful first edition in 2016, again, fans will have the possibility to meet and chat with participants of the show. There you can get information about behind-the-scenes action and get your personal picture or autograph with one or more of the actors, and enjoy to meet fellow fans from all over the world. You can learn more by visiting www.thegathering2017.de. There you can get all the information you need. But get this, you can enjoy a 10% discount for your purchases there using the coupon code OutlanderCast during checkout. Now that's going to be OutlanderCast, just as one word. No space in between Outlander and Cast. And once again, that will be for a 10% discount. Dragonfly and VIP tickets are close to selling out, so you're going to want to check that out soon. Once again, thank you so much to The Gathering in Cologne, Germany, held on March 10th through 12th, 2017, for sponsoring today's episode. Joining us today is Scott Kyle, a Scottish actor best known for his roles as Clancy in The Angel's Share and for the film Kilo 2 Bravo, in which he played a real-life soldier, Corporal Stu Pearson, in a story about a small unit of British soldiers in Afghanistan. He also has an extensive career in theater and on screen, and is currently the artistic director of the Bathgate Regal Theatre in Scotland, for which he is very passionate about and is inspiring local people of all ages to express themselves in the theatrical arts. But we all know him as Ross in Outlander from Season 2. Scott, thank you so much for joining us today.
No worries, it's a pleasure to be here.
What exactly was your drive to start acting?
I think I've always enjoyed storytelling. In the house, if you were telling a story, you had to be able to hold the audience, or someone else would take the audience and the story from you. So, living in a house with my big brother, I had to be very good at storytelling. Otherwise, you'd get told to shut up and somebody else's story was more interesting. So I think I've been telling stories since I was a kid. So, yeah, storytelling's kind of pretty much been something I've always done, and just took that throughout life and ended up going to school doing a bit of storytelling and performing, and then college, and then obviously getting a chance to work in films and TVs has been a total gift.
How did you come into Outlander, speaking of TV, and what was your audition process for Outlander like? Like, what happened?
Well, believe it or not, I had actually auditioned for Outlander a year previous to auditioning for Ross. At the time, I had no idea what the show was or anything about it, and I was auditioning for a hairy Highlander called Angus, believe it or not.
Hey, we know him.
And it said a hairy Highlander. Right away, I thought, well, I can't grow a beard because I've got this baby face. I can't grow a beard, so that doesn't sound like me. But I went down, I did the audition, and never heard or thought anything of it. And then obviously a year later, I was performing at the Edinburgh Festival, and I got a phone call from the agent saying Outlander. So I gave it a quick Google, and obviously by then it was now a TV series. So when I auditioned previously, there was nothing on the internet about it other than the books. But now there was a TV series. So my wife and I sat and watched all the episodes, and then I got a 3-line audition. I had 3 lines, and it was a scene round the campfire, the one where Angus spits in Kincaid's face.
Yep.
You know the one I'm talking about?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Yeah. And believe it or not, Willie was in that scene when I first read for it.
Oh, wow.
Character Willie.
Yep.
So I went in and I did an awful lot of prep for a 3-line audition. I had subtext the whole line, I'd subtext all the different actors, all the different characters, who was doing what and why they would do that. I went into the audition, well, I'll tell you something, when you're auditioning for Outlander, there's different processes and people you meet. If you are auditioning for a lead, you meet Suzanne, the casting director. If you're meeting for one of the smaller parts, you meet Simone. I went in supposed to be meeting Simone, and Simone was away seeing a show at the Edinburgh Festival, and I met with Amy, the assistant. So it gives you an idea of how what I thought. Oh God, Simone doesn't even want to meet me. It must be a teeny wee part that I'm doing. So I was meeting Amy, and I said to Amy, I've got loads of questions about the script. She said, look, I'm just here to film it. So yeah, that was my audition, but I must have done something right, and I got the call, thankfully, and I made it onto the show.
So then you were cast, and most of your time as the character of Ross was spent training or in battle. So how did you train for those battle scenes? Did you have to go to boot camp, and what was that all like? Yeah, we did a boot camp. The boot camp was a number of things. It was weapons training with the muskets and the musket balls. I was training with the swords and the shields and stuff, the targes, and we did horse riding as well as part of it. Ooh. So yeah, it was a kind of all-inclusive boot camp, doing a lot of different things, getting to know the horse that you were going to be riding on, and it might not stick out in your head when Ross was on a horse, but it was actually on the way up to Culloden House. There was a scene there where I was on the horse that day. So yeah, that was a kind of boot camp stuff. But I was aware that when I kind of read the script, I know that you've got Sam and you've got other actors that are kind of really fit, playing soldiers in it. And I wanted to make sure that Ross didn't look or feel like a soldier. He shouldn't be ready to go to war, So even physically. So I was quite happy to pig out in the lead up to going in.
How many Twinkies did you eat? Going into it, did you have a lot of cake or something?
Too many, according to my wife. Ordering takeaways and doing everything I wanted to do. So it was one of those nice. The horrible side of that is when you're doing something a bit more you need to get in shape for, and you actually have to go to the gym and watch what you're eating. The other side, it's lovely where you're like, yeah, we'll have another takeaway this week.
So everybody joined you during the training process? Were there people like Sam or
no, obviously going into the show, how I describe going into Outlander is a bit like when you were a kid and you were playing on the merry-go-round. So there's already kids on the merry-go-round that's going round pretty fast, and you're on the sideline just picking your timing of when you're going to jump on. Yep. And you need to pick your timing, you need to get on, and hopefully if you've done a good job, they'll let you off safely and you can maybe come back another time. So that's how I felt. So I went in with Gregor Firth, who played Kincaid, and we did a lot of the fight stuff together. We did the musket training and stuff with a lot of the other guys that were for the Lallybrook men. So they were already in when we came in, and we were just kind of tagging on to the end of what they were already doing, because we'd been doing the fight sequence stuff before that for Preston Pans. We were doing the stage fight for that. So yeah, it was me. Gregor and I did a lot of things. He didn't do the horse riding with me. I did that on my own though, because we knew by that time he was dead.
Oh, yes.
So you obviously knew well in advance. You got the script and everything. You saw that he was going to die by that.
Yeah, well, the biggest shock for me, obviously, the funny thing is, as a fan of the show, which obviously I am, so you're watching the show on the TV, then you get the script through. The first thing I said was, I can't believe they're killing Angus. This is unbelievable.
Yes,
So that was the first thing, as a fan going, oh no, this is mad that they're killing him. So yeah, that was the first shock, and then obviously as you read on, Kincaid dies in the same battle, the battle just earlier. But what I was going to say, the funny thing is, I'm saying that I read Angus first, is as an actor, you read the script back to front, right? So just explain this to folk. When you get a script through, you don't open it from the first page. You flip it to the back and you start reading backwards to see if you're still alive in it at the end. So you originally you start reading the script back to front. So the first thing I saw was that, oh, Angus is dead, because I'm reading it back to front. Then I go further on and Kincaid died too. And then go further on and I'm going, thank God I'm still alive. So that's all it was.
Jeez, it might have been a different story though if you were on Game of Thrones. I mean, I'm sure all those guys must be wearing every day.
Well, I'd love the opportunity to have. so yeah, if they make the call, they have to die on Game of Thrones.
you talked about Gregor Firth, and obviously you guys were playing in tandem with each other for the shooting. What was that dynamic like, being matched with him? Were you friends prior to? Did you just get to know each other? And did you come up with a backstory aside from what was given to you from the creative team?
I didn't know Gregor, so I met him literally on boot camp. And the thing that happens when you're an actor or in any job, when you're going to be relying on someone you've just met, you basically you have to get past all the kind of the shyness when you first meet a new human being. You have to drop all that very quickly, because you know the time's against you, and you have to get very close and very comfortable very quickly. Because you have to skip processes, if that makes sense. We don't have, normally you maybe got an office job and you've got a few weeks to get to know people, then they'll maybe invite you out for a drink, and then you'll get to know each other better, then the Christmas party, and it takes maybe 6 months before you're kind of part of the team. We have to go through that process, kind of pretty much 24 hours, maybe a few days, just to quickly get to the stage where we live in each other's pockets and we know each other inside out. Because obviously, both as different artists, you both got a vision. Obviously, the casting team have got a vision for the script. The scriptwriters got a vision for it, and the people that are going to be filming it have, but the actors as well have got their take on what they see the characters and the traits of the character. So it's really important that we understand each other, because we're working together so closely. Because there's no point in, kind of the lines do certain things, but there's also a lot of physicality and looks, and in certain moments, who takes the lead. Even though the lines say certain things, who's going to take the lead in that scene, and what sort of things are going on. And one of the things you might have seen if you were watching it was the public lashing that Ross gets. Kincaid was really peed off about that, and he played it. He was very angry, and a couple of the takes he did a spit and stuff before it. I don't know if it made the final cut, but he was playing aggressive, and I was kind of playing stop. I was in my eyes, I'm giving it to him. We just need to take this. This is not the place to fight about it. We're not going to win this argument, so just take it. That was a public lashing for letting Dougal and Angus and the other men into the camp. And obviously it's not played out massively on screen, but the subtext for us was we were hardly going to stop the war chief from coming into the camp. Do you know what I mean? We weren't going to say, no, you can't get in, and risk getting murdered there and then. So we thought, let him in, and then we'll get into trouble for it, and we just had to take the lashing for it.
Did you guys as a team come up with a backstory aside from what you were given from the creative team? Did you work through that and trying to get to know each other?
Not massive backstory, because obviously we referenced as much for the books, but there wasn't much about us. There wasn't much to delve in. The nice thing, obviously, if you're working on something like Outlander, is there's a rich, kind of resource of information that you can tap into. But Ross was kind of briefly mentioned, and Kincaid even briefer in the books. So yeah, we just had the basics that they're Lallybrook men. They've got their wives. Kincaid's got his kids, and they're just kind of normal guys that are going about their life until they get swept up in this army movement that's going to war. So it was just kind of not a massive details background, kind of, but just enough to go, yeah, we know where we've came from and what we are, and obviously it's more about playing the situation of what's happening to the guys as opposed to a massive backstory, if that makes sense.
So talking about playing into the situation, were you allowed to ad-lib or interpret your lines to give a personal flair to Ross?
On a show like Outlander, they've been working on the script an awful long time, so the opportunity, I would say, as a new guy coming in, I wasn't going to say, oh yeah, I'm just going to change all these lines. It wasn't. I didn't feel that was something I was going to do. On other projects, like I worked with Ken Loach, who's a UK director, and he likes to work without scripts. He likes actors just to play the situation and ad lib. I worked on Kajaki, the British war movie, and it was a true story, so you kind of had to stick to the facts. And on Outlander, I kind of took the same approach, that let's stick to what the guys, these writers are the best in the world. They're working on Outlander for a reason. Let's trust what they've written, and they know the story better than us. So let's stick with what they've got. But there was a few kind of opportunities for a wee ad lib here or a wee ad lib there. And there was actually one scene where, we did not run. The scene where Ross says to Angus, we did not run.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
When you read that on the paper, on the actual script, it was that scene was kind of wedged in between two other scenes around it, and when I read it, I thought it would have played out a bit better if that was the first part of the shot, that it starts off with we did not run, and then it focuses on the main cast and they do what they're doing the whole way through it. And I thought this, and I kind of expressed it to Stephen, who I was working with on it, and he says, I agree, Scott, and I think you should maybe ask if we could do that. So I went to Ira and I said, Ira, look, don't want to step out of line here. I think that it would be nice if it started on we did not run. That's the first thing that happens, is it comes down on Ross. Stephen's character Angus is there. Ross says we did not run. Stephen kind of gives a wee head nod and acknowledgement of that, and then the camera moves on and the whole scene kicks off, because what was happening before was the scene was kicking off, then in the middle of the scene, this we did not run moment happened. And I just thought the context of it, that it suited the scene that it started at the top of it. And I said to Ira, and Ira said, I like it, speak to the director. I was like, oh no. And then I had to go and speak to Philip John, who was a fantastic director. I loved working with Philip. And I said to him, and he said, go and ask Ira. and I said, well, I've asked Ira, and he likes it. And Philip said, well, I like it as well. And how does Stephen feel about it? And I said, Stephen's happy with it. And that was what happened. We made that change in it. And then, I felt pretty brave to go and ask for that, because obviously it's such a big show. And they've done the research and the prep, and it was just something I thought this could maybe work just as well, if not maybe better.
Right. Is that something that normally happens? Like, is that kind of like the protocol? Like, if you think, I love the script, but I think there's this one tweak. Do you go to the writer directly, or do normally you go to like the director?
Well, I think Ira was writing that episode, so we were fortunate that he was on the ground with us as an executive producer as well. I don't know how often that happens, where there's an executive producer on the floor with you, in terms of and the writer, if that makes sense, because he was doing two jobs. So I thought we were fortunate to have him. I don't know if it's the norm. I was nervous about asking it, but I thought it would benefit the show, and that's why I asked it. In the bigger picture, it wasn't about me and Stephen and our scene. It was about the whole picture that we were painting, and I just thought it'd be nice if that's where the scene starts on those two, and then it moves away and let myself grieve.
Mm-hmm.
And Stephen just processed because he was looking after Rupert as Angus. So, I don't know if it's the norm, but I felt comfortable enough to ask it. There's been other times when I maybe thought something, and I know that it's not my place to say. Kind of, if that makes sense.
What other kind of back and forth did you ever have with Philip John, the director of Preston Pans, or any other kind of back and forth with any of the creative team on the show while you were there?
Well, I was in 6 episodes, and I was very fortunate that I got to work on 4 of them with Philip John. So I was really happy to work with him. I thought he was a fantastic director. And, every director's different, and they do all different things. And your role in it as well. Sometimes directors have worked on the show before, so they've got a way of working. Sometimes it's their first episodes. And with Philip, it was his first episodes when I went in, so it was my first episodes and his. So he was kind of new kid on the block as well. But I loved his process. We come in. Any scene we come in, we have a couple of minutes chatting away about the scene. We then read out the scene. He asks any thoughts on the scene, and then we say, okay, everybody happy, let's shoot this. I really like that. Not every director you're going to work with has got the same process, but I particularly enjoyed working with Philip. But also those were the bigger scenes, they were bigger episodes, so maybe that was it as well. I had more to do when I was working with Philip, kind of. So yeah, that was kind of my favourite stuff, was being able to feel that you could have a chat. You know, we also, depending as well, we were all staying together in the Creef Hydro up in Perth, and that was the first week. So you're going for dinner with Ira and Philip and stuff. So there's chat over dinner, of course. So that helps the next day on set.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It's not, you're not just seeing them in the work environment, you're actually seeing them socially as well, which I think was a great benefit.
Is that dinner like a big group thing, or is that like a one-on-one type deal? And is it almost like an open door policy, like, hey, let's all talk about this right now?
No, it's just basically the hotel is there when and we arrived the day before filming, so you went down to the bar and sometimes, I mean, one day I went down, it was just Ira, so me and Ira sat and had a few beers together, which was great. I mean, what an interesting, fantastically talented man Ira was to sit and hear his stories, you know, working on Star Trek and everything else, so it's fantastic. And then there's some nights where you go down and there's 6 people already there. There's some nights you go down, you're the first person, and then 6 people turn up. So it just depends, you know. There was nice nights where we were sitting with Sam and Kat and, you know, kind of all the stars essentially of the show, just having dinner and sharing stories and having a bit of a laugh. And then there's other nights you go down and there's just, you know, a couple of people, and there's other nights when people are working and other people aren't working. So yeah, it just depends. And I think I had a bit of everything. I think I had some one-on-one with folk. I had some group chats, and inevitably we're all there for the show, so inevitably chat turns to maybe the episode you're on, or you know, kind of what you thought of that day's work, or what's in store for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. So it seemed really, really cold there on set when you were obviously filming the show, and from what I'm told, the winters there in Scotland, are, especially the latest one, was pretty tough. But also
they're all lying to you. It's absolutely roasting hot. That's just fantastic acting that we're doing there.
It's the same thing here in Rhode Island too. Don't worry about it.
Acting. We just look so cold. With those pale blue skin, that's acting. We do that. We're like chameleons. No, it's freezing cold. It's absolutely freezing cold.
So how do you keep it light? Like it also seemed like, despite the fact that it was so cold, it seemed like you guys were having like a genuinely good time, especially when you were all together, and especially, you know, when you were all drinking together, at least within the context of the show. It seemed like you were having a good time. How do you keep it light?
Yeah, I think because some of the scenes that you do are so dark that inevitably the humour comes in the dark moments and stuff like that. I mean, I think one of the ones was in Angus's death scene, because it was very emotional for everybody on the show. You know, I mean, obviously I had only met Stephen Walters, but I'd watched the show, so as a fan, I was going, this is a really sad day on set that Stephen's character's dying. But people, they started then taking bets on what they thought Stephen was saying when he gargles with the blood in his mouth. You know, the Angus dying. So, you know, it was a sad day, and there was people were emotional on set, particularly the longer serving cast members and crew. They were upset because that was, you know, Stephen was leaving, and he'd been there since the start. But yeah, quite quickly people start taking. I'll put my money on that he said this and now, and you know, loads of rude things getting said. You know? So yeah, that sort of keeps the mood light. And to be honest, I mean, the guys are pretty good. They huddle round in the cold days and share a coffee and a funny story and try and keep the mood light, because some of the stuff you're doing is very dark, you know, and sad as well, very emotional, some of the stuff, you know.
So who of the cast is telling those funny stories?
Mr. McTavish is a wonderful storyteller, and he's got lots of them. So yeah, Graham's a great storyteller. If Graham's on, it's a bit like being back in the house. You don't get the floor much if Graham's there, because he's such a fantastic storyteller that he just goes from one great story to another. So he's great. Stephen's a wonderful storyteller, but in a very different way. Stephen's more one-on-one. So you like to get Stephen and he gets your ear. You know, he sits with you one-on-one and tells you a fantastic story. He loves the Beatles. He's always telling you about the Beatles in Liverpool. You know, he's very proud of his hometown. And Grant's wonderful in the sense of a great debate. Grant loves to throw a curveball at people and get a debate going. So that's very interesting. You know, political or otherwise, he likes to throw in a wee an opinion about something that gets everybody going. So yeah, it's everybody's got different skill sets, and it's funny, sometimes maybe someone's sitting reading a book, you know, like I remember we were on set one day, Katrina was reading a book, you know, I think Sam had his head in lines, I was just sitting relaxing, Stephen was doing what he was doing, and Grant just started a conversation. Next minute Kat's head came up, she had an opinion on whatever it was they were chatting about, and it kind of got a whole debate going and a whole chat going, and those days are good as well. And so sometimes I just sat like a fly in the wall and just sat and listened to what was going on.
Can you take us through what a regular day on set was like for you, just from waking up and what you would have to do?
Well, what would normally happen is a car would pick me up at either 4:30 or 5 in the morning with one of the drivers, the fantastic guys that get us there safely to and from set. You jump into the car under a cover of darkness, close your eyes, wake up on set. They would put you in the trailer, get your costume, get you dressed. Then they would put you into makeup, put you back into your trailer, leave you there until they need you, and then you would be called onto set and they drive you up to set. Now, when I told my mother this, she thought it sounded very, very glamorous. And she said to me, "Oh, wow, they send a car for you and they get you dressed and they bring you breakfast in the trailer and then they put you in and they sort your hair and they fix all your makeup." And she says, "Oh, it must be great to be a star." I said, "Mum, see, you look at it that way. I'll tell you what's actually happening is actors were so unreliable that they don't let us make our own way to set. They send a car so as they know exactly where we are at all times because we're not trustworthy to get ourselves there. Then they put us in our trailer when we arrive and they say, 'We will bring you your breakfast, so don't go missing. There's no reason for you to leave this trailer. Just stay there and we'll bring you your breakfast.' Then they send someone to get you dressed because you're not even competent enough to do that on your own. So they bring someone to make sure that you're wearing the right clothes, in the right order, in the right place. They then take you into makeup because you can't even put your own makeup or your own wig on. So they get somebody to do that for you too. And then they put you in your trailer and they say, 'Do not move. There's no reason for you to leave here. Don't go missing.' And they maybe bring you something to eat there. And then they take you up onto set. Well, they've kept you away from set all day because the real workers, the real talent are there making the show. And then they bring you up, they drop you in, say your 4 lines or whatever, and then they take you back and lock you in the trailer again where you can't do any cause any trouble. So that's what's really going on. That's what I tell my
You
mum
painted
anyway.
a very different picture. Yeah, exactly.
I kind of wish my life was like that. Just tell me where to go, where to be, and just take me there.
So you talked about being, sitting down, getting fed, getting this makeup and hair. Let's talk about your hair. How did they put that hair on your head?
Well, here's the thing. Some of the guys with the long hair got very, very expensive wigs, like £6,000. It's real hair. Wow. And they're very custom made to your head. Obviously, Ross going in was such a huge character, such an important person in the whole story that I had got somebody else's wig that didn't fit my head. So Anna, who does the makeup, she's the head makeup artist. She had to do my wig every day because it was such a pain in the bum. That she says, "I'll do this. I know it's a horrible job, but I'll make sure that I do it every day so that it's happy." Because I had to pin it in loads of places because it didn't actually fit my head. It was for somebody with a bigger head than I had. So, so yeah, so that was the hair. But it was strange because I looked at myself in the mirror one day and I'd seen my dad. I seen my dad at my age when he was in a band. And I've never been in a band, but I seen my dad and myself for the first time. So that was terrifying.
Oh man, that's a terrifying day for any man. Just seeing your dad and yourself.
Normally, guys see that when they're losing their hair. They say, "I'm starting to look like my dad."
Yeah. You see, it's an upside down world I live in. It's crazy.
Yes.
So getting back to you and Gregor, I wanted to talk about. Was there any intimidation going into this whole thing? Like, I know that you weren't a fan, but then you became a fan watching it, and then you were just suddenly the answer to Angus and Rupert for everybody in Lallybroch. How was those people? Angus and Rupert were so well established and really well loved. What's that like getting into it?
It was very sad the day that we did the first read through of the scene where Angus dies. Ira stood up and read out a poem, a wonderful, beautiful poem, and it was called "The Death of Angus Moore." And it was really sad, and it was one of those horrible feelings as the new guys coming in. You're going, God, I know that I end up being pals with Rupert, and I felt really guilty. I felt really bad. But I think, to be honest, Ross and Kincaid were a vehicle for, in my eyes anyway, were a vehicle to help Rupert and Angus. That was their purpose, essentially, and why they put them in is what I mean. I mean, the reason they were there, I think, was maybe to make the emotional connection and say the things that Rupert and Angus probably wouldn't have said to each other. Mm-hmm. I.e., what's mine's yours and yours mine. Mm-hmm. That lovely little scene that we had, that was a kind of feeder scene for Angus, who watched us and then turns around and said, "You can have my dirk and you can have my hoor," as he calls it. Right? And Rupert goes, "What, you daft? But you're not getting anything. Don't want your dirk. She's not even yours to give," he says. So, but I think we were the kind of feeder, if you know what I mean. We were given emotional scenes that rather, it would have been different having Angus and Rupert doing that. It wouldn't have probably felt right. I think that's why they put Ross and Kincaid in there to represent, what it is like going to war, for the common man, and how terrifying it is, and the two guys making a pact. And the horrible thing was, and I said to Gregor, they're really kind of a short straw. He drew the short straw in the sense that he dies in the same scene as Angus. Do you know what I mean? Who's a huge character in the show. And he knew that, and I said, well, I've also got the task of, I've got to mourn your loss at the same time that the whole audience are mourning the loss of Angus. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? So in many ways I was going, maybe they won't give a toss about Ross and Kincaid because Angus has just died, and it's Angus and Rupert that they'll be caring about. And as you've seen the episode, obviously, I think I'm very, very lucky that they focused a lot on Angus's death. But the reaction and the mourning and reaction of death, they kind of gave that to me. They utilised me. They focused quite a bit. So I felt when I watched, I was like, wow, they've stayed on me. The camera stayed on me quite a bit longer than I was expecting. Mm-hmm. And I think, to be honest, if I'm really honest, I think that was hats off to Katrina Kat. She left the camera with me in that scene. And what I mean by that is that as the leading actress in the show, if she had done anything at all, in terms of a performance, the camera would have followed her to where she was going. Mm-hmm. And she was very, very gracious and very kind, and she just kind of left me. She kind of gave me a moment, said there's nothing more I can do, in character obviously, but as an actress she kind of left me with the camera, if that makes sense. So she went away, she kind of sneaked away in the scene as well, kind of just left Ross mourning. But in a performance sense, I was very grateful to her for leaving the camera with me, because the camera just stayed with me, and it ended, I think it's about a minute long scene. Mm-hmm. And going in as a kind of, I'd say one of the smaller parts, I wasn't expecting to get that much screen time and things like that. Normally the other things that end up in the cutting room floor just because they don't have time for it. Mm-hmm. So I felt very lucky to be given the time that we did, and both Gregor and I felt absolutely like we'd won a watch going into the show and getting the scenes that we had. And loads of people go in for a few episodes and no one ever remembers them, and we were very blessed to have some really nice moments together. Mm-hmm. And separately as well.
Well, I applaud both of you, because I think really what both of you were able to bring, and you especially after, mourning Kincaid's death, was you brought a sensitive nature to the Highlanders. We'd seen them so much, being able to joke, and then even during the battle scenes, there were always, these loud jokesters or just strong-willed guys, and you were able to bring a true sensitivity and a lot of emotion to it. So I applaud you.
Well, thank you. And in that tough world, I also thought that it wouldn't have been fitting for Ross to just break his heart openly in front of that room, because it's a tough room with a lot of tough men. So the nice thing is, I think he looks alone in that moment with the camera. It looks like he is alone in the world at that moment, which he is, because he's lost his best friend in the world. And I think he just looked lost. And I think everybody could connect with that. Everybody that's ever lost someone in their life just looked at him and went, God, son, that's how we all feel, when you lost someone. So, yeah, I think I was very lucky.
You were.
So you were saying how much you loved working with Philip John, and especially during the death scenes, or the will scenes, like talking about what's left and what you can give to each other. What kind of things were you and Gregor getting from Philip John, like specifically to try to make that scene as emotional as possible?
One of the nicest things was his freedom. It's a funny thing to say. From the director, he let us find our way through it. To give you enough takes, because sometimes when you're in, you're the first take, you're just finding where you're going to stand, how you're going to be doing it. So it's kind of like a test run. And obviously on set, what I say to folk is, as some of the smaller parts, you can't take 5 and 10 takes to get something, because the money shots are the bigger stars. That's where if Sam or Kat need 4 or 5 takes on something that's got loads of lines, or it's a very, very emotional scene, then they need that time on set. As the smaller parts, one of your jobs is to know your lines and get it in a couple of takes, because that you don't have, we can't stand for 3 hours while you remember your lines after forgetting them or not getting it right. So you the job of the kind of The smaller roles, I'd say, is to make sure your preparation is wonderful, and then if you get a couple of goes at it, that's you need to get it in those takes. And I felt that Philip really gave us a bit of freedom to perform and to play and to have fun in certain aspects, kind of to play the situation, so it wasn't too rehearsed. And sometimes you don't get the chance to do that on bigger shows because the time is so precious.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's better to rehearse, or do you think it's just better to just do it and see what you get?
It's a mixed bag. There's some scenes that you like. There's a deleted scene. I think it's a deleted scene anyway. It was the Ross gets revenge on the redcoat that kills Kincaid. And we filmed that, and we also filmed Kincaid's death, but they never made it, obviously, into the show for whatever reason. But I had one take on the killing of the redcoat. I only had one take. It was the last shot of the day. And I certainly, as a performer, I felt everything I felt. I had to condition my body, and that's it. My body physically, as a physical thing, my body murders a redcoat, and my eyes and my brain process what it does. Mm-hmm. So to be honest, I was a wee bit shaken. But I only got one take on it. Situations like that when you're going in, there was 12 hours I was waiting that day. I think my scene was due to be in the afternoon, and it got moved to the last shot because there was more important things going on. And knowing that you've only got one take and everybody's waiting to get home is a lot of pressure on you. So yeah, I think as a smaller part, your job is to try and get it right, and try and make the most of it. And yeah, you can't over rehearse things, but there is the rehearsing is a lot of prep, and I think most of it you do on your own. So so that when they shout action, you know all your lines, everything's all there second nature, and you play the situation.
Can you talk about the atmosphere during the Preston Pan shoot, particularly the battle?
It was a strange kind of day because we filmed it all in a huge tent to make it as foggy as we did. We did the initial battle charges out in the open field, so we did the charges into the fog and the smoke. But we actually filmed the Preston Pans in a huge big marquee tent that was full of smoke, so it was actually quite difficult to breathe. And everybody was getting out of the tent as often as possible between takes to get a breath and breathe in, and then going in. But the mud was really thick. It was a waterlogged field, and obviously the great thing and the wonderful thing about Outlander is that it's not all green screened and CGI'd. And what I mean by that is that you can see the redcoats that you're fighting. Mm-hmm. You can see the Highlanders next to you. It's very, very, it's a total gift that you can see everything and your eyes get to see it, so your imagination and your brain gets to process it, and acting it actually becomes a lot easier. Whereas if you were doing a green screen scene when nobody's next to you and you have to imagine it all, it's much more challenging, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So having the ability to have all the redcoats and the horses and the field and the mud, it's actually very, very helpful. It's much better than doing it inside the studio, to a green screen.
Obviously, the two most talked about battles in television, I think in most recent time, actually as much as I can remember, is the Battle of the Bastards in Game of Thrones and Preston Pans for Outlander. Mm-hmm. And they were both wonderfully shot and unique battles, of course, in completely different ways. What do you think sets you, I'm not sure if you've seen the Battle of the Bastards, but what do you think separates or sets you apart in Outlander from Game of Thrones, and what kind of personal feeling do you get as an actor or a viewer of those shows?
I mean, I don't know in terms of I can't speak for any of the fans of Game of Thrones, but as a Scotsman and as an actor that performed in Outlander, knowing that the battles actually took place in a real world, not in a fictional world, knowing that Preston Pans did have a battle, knowing that the Culloden stuff, which you knew was coming up in season 3, had actually happened in Culloden. You were representing, ghosts of past. Does that make sense? It was like you were in a fictional world, but you were kind of telling a true story. So it was a different kind of weight of responsibility. And when you stood on that field looking around, you really did feel that you were following in the footsteps of your ancestors, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And obviously on Game of Thrones, I don't know because I've never been on it, but I imagine that obviously it's very much a kind of fabricated, wonderful story that's been told, but you don't have that historical responsibility. Mm-hmm. In the sense that, a lot of people are going to watch Outlander, and although there's aspects of it, which is the creative team have got involved in, that they will look at the Preston Pans battle and people will have a picture of that's what it was like. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure that you're part of something that you say is one of the things that people go, it's an iconic scene, you want to go and see this. You don't want to be part of the one that say, have you ever seen that? They didn't get it right. So that kind of pressure, I say, is difficult. They're different than I would say. I can only imagine what it'd be like on Game of Thrones, but I would say that for me it was, as a Scotsman, walking on that mud, kind of thinking that you're representing, your ancestors and people from the past was a big responsibility. And yeah, it could get emotional when you were looking around, going, God, and there was scared Highlanders looking over at redcoats that were trained army. So yeah, you could totally feel it.
So is Culloden Moor or Preston Pans, is that like a massive part of your culture as like we Americans think that it is, or how the show depicts it? Like, in other words, like we Americans look at like Gettysburg, or when Washington crosses the Delaware, as like these seminal moments that are always kind of in the back of our brains, and we're very proud of it. Is this the same kind of deal for people in Scotland?
I would say yes and no. Yes, in the sense that going to school, growing up in Scotland, you are told about the historical battles, and you're told about things that happened in the country. But no, in the sense that I had never been to Culloden until I was obviously on Outlander. I did Outlander, the Battle of Preston Pans, and when we finished in season 2, my wife and I took a drive up to Culloden, just because we'd been involved in the show, and I thought it is a bit of a shame that I'm a Scotsman and I've never actually been to Culloden. So we took a drive up, and the strange thing was standing on the moor with the tourists from all over the world. The people are chatting, people are taking selfies, people are taking happy memories, like holiday photographs, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So people are going, yeah, I'm standing here next to the Fraser Stone, I'm standing here next to this. And I felt, like my wife said to me, should we get a picture? And I said, I don't really want a picture. Mm-hmm. It's not something I want to stand with a big smile on my face. It's not a holiday photo, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. It's a really sad place to be. And I felt, because I'd stood next to 100 Highlanders, I knew what they all looked like. I knew all their names. You had befriended them. We had drank together. And then we looked out, and there was the other actors. The redcoats were at the other side. So when I was standing on Culloden Moor, I could see the battle very clearly in my head, because we had acted it out kind of Preston Pans, if that makes sense. We had the Highlanders. So when I was standing there and the guides saying this is where the Highlanders stood, in my head I was flashing back to standing at Preston Pans with the Highlanders. And that picture was clearly in my head, standing on Culloden Moor. And the same when they said, and the redcoats would have been over here. And I could see them in my head, because I'd seen the other actors that were playing the redcoats. I'd seen how it all looked. So although everybody else might have been able to imagine it, I could see it very, very clearly in my head. Mm-hmm. And it was very, very emotional being there. So yeah, it's part of the history, but I don't know if it's as, maybe other people have visited Culloden. That's just my personal take on it, that I knew of the history, but I had never been to visit the places, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Do you, since you live in Scotland and people have now been able to watch Outlander and see Preston Pans, for example, do you know that if other people have done the same thing as you and gone to go visit Culloden, for example, because they were inspired by seeing it in the show?
I don't know that folk in Scotland, it's not hit the whole of Scotland, if that makes sense. There's certain fans of the show in Scotland, obviously, and I think they definitely go on the tours, the Outlander tours. But the majority of people that know about the show are from out with Scotland. So it is kind of peculiar, obviously. Like Sam and Kat can walk down Glasgow and no one bars an eyelid. But if they walk down LA or something, there'll be crowds of fans all around about them. So it's kind of surreal and good at the same time. That today at the theatre, I was at the Regal today, and we had 3 fans in today that came from America, Scotland, and the Netherlands, and they got a tour of the theatre. And the people in my work who probably haven't even seen Outlander yet kind of don't get it. They're looking at me giving a tour to people from all over the world, and they're going, why are they so interested in the manager? Why are they interested in Scott? You're sitting in the cafe across the road and people are taking pictures with you, and the cafe staff who see me every other day are saying, what is going on? So I don't know that Scotland have kind of felt the weight of Outlander yet, but it will be amazing when it hits.
Now, obviously, living there, one of the things I want to ask you is: have you noticed like a big pickup in tourism because of Outlander? And what do you think? And especially at your theater too. I mean, you just talked about 3 Americans just showing up and being like, "Hey, where's the manager?" How does that? Like, I don't mean to put you down, but it's certainly not what I'm trying to get at. But like,
they were looking for your ponytail,
right? Yeah. Like, how does that happen? And how do you deal with that going forward?
I think, again, I would say that I don't know that Scotland as a whole is like people that are going to their work, to their office job are noticing it. I think the tourist destinations are very aware of it. I think the government are very aware of it. At the Regal Theatre, we're certainly very aware of it because, we're benefiting greatly from the visits that people are coming over. They're visiting, they're picking up some merchandise, they're making donations, they're coming to see shows. So yeah, I'm definitely very aware of it. Our local community is starting to become more and more aware of it. But I don't know that someone going to their work in the town centre and coming back home is any more aware of it. But it's surreal. It's very, very strange going on because for 2 minutes every day when you're given a tour, you're a TV star, and then when they leave, it's back to the janitor hands you the brush and says you better get that cleared up because you're not a TV star to him.
You're just a manager. You're just a guy. That's
exactly
it.
That's it. Absolutely.
So talking about that, how do you balance your day job at the theater with all of the craziness of Outlander?
What's happening just now, I don't think was ever intended to happen. I don't think anybody banked on a wee Glasgow actor going in and having, with respect, very, very little dialogue in a show, and ending up with 53,000 followers on Twitter. That was nobody's intention. I don't think that was ever in the plan. I think the TV gods are having a laugh down at us at the moment. They're just having fun. But yeah, what's happened over the last wee while, the last 6 months, is that more and more of my time has been taken up with the tours for the people that are coming through, getting back to emails, maybe even doing interviews like this. I mean, today was my day off and I went in to meet those 3 fans that came through because it's the only day that they were in the country and it's the only day they could come to the theatre. And I thought, well, they've been so generous and so helpful to the theatre that it's an hour for me to drive to my work and an hour to drive home. Wow. So I drove through today. I gave them the tour. Someone turned up to do an interview. What call it, just off the cuff. The girl was saying, "Can I do an interview?" So they then went for lunch. I did the interview with the girl. The girl left that was doing the interview. They came back over. We finished the tour. So my probably what should have been an hour-long tour was 6 hours.
Oh my!
Because we went for lunch and everything else. So yeah, but the theatre staff are being great. They're very supportive, and they know that the fans have given so much to the theatre already. We've had donations and purchases. Stephen's doing a charity album for us. The Highlander guys from the show did a charity calendar for us. And so far, the Outlander pound, the value of income to the theatre is £40,000.
Oh my word!
So yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I feel about it. So therefore, I think everyone at the theatre realises that it's important that Scott can get onto Twitter and thank folk who are buying things and can do the tours because we could not have generated that income from anything else I could be doing. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. And you should definitely take advantage of that. I mean, because this is your time. This is when you've made an impact on people, and people have really responded to you, and not only just as an actor, but on a personal level. I mean, you just talked about 53,000 or 57,000 followers on Twitter. These people care about you, the person. Mm-hmm. So as such, has that really changed you as a person or as an actor since the onset of Outlander?
It's been really strange. I've been at the theatre for 5 years. When I went into the theatre, the idea was to try and save it from closing down. And we've been doing that for 5 years. And to be honest, the team, we were all pretty exhausted from doing it. And the support, this new wave of support that's came in, it's kind of given everybody a new lease of life and kind of breathed life back into everybody again, and everyone's kind of feeling motivated and realising that there's a bigger community than just in Bathgate that I want to support. And it's now, as I say, our army used to be a small community that we're trying to save the theatre. We've now got 50,000+ people on Twitter that are supporting as well, and that's supporting sometimes just by retweeting something or liking or sharing. Some folk are buying merchandise, those that can't come over and physically come to the theatre. We've had people from Scotland, fans of the show, that are coming. Tonight there was 2 new volunteers who are in working one of the shows that are volunteering. Now, the volunteers are saving the theatre an awful lot of money, so they're donating their time. And the people that can't get there, some of them are buying teddy bears or hoodies. Now, I don't think for a minute anybody's desperately needing a teddy bear in their life, but they want to contribute. They want to support. So yeah, it's a bit crazy and maybe even hard to process. But when you're on a project that you've been needing a bit of support for. You don't tend to ask the questions. You just embrace it and be grateful, and move forward. So yeah, it's been absolutely wonderful, and long may it continue.
So it sounds like you've obviously had a lot of challenges for the theater and as an actor, and you've met them to a plumb, and it's all of it has kind of culminated in this Outlander role, and it's propelled you into a lot of great things. But bringing it back to Outlander, what exactly was your biggest challenge, do you think, while filming it on set?
I'm trying to think biggest challenge. One of the biggest challenges that people sometimes don't actually appreciate this is when you're going in as one of the smaller parts is to remain focused throughout the day, knowing that you're only needed for an hour, but you're waiting maybe 11 hours. Some days if there's a scene needing a lot of work on it, then your scene gets moved to the end of the day. And it's just the pecking order. It's just the way things go. So sometimes you're sitting in your trailer for 11 hours, and then they call you out, and you've only got an hour. You've not got a lot to get all your stuff done, and it's been able to maintain focused for the 11 hours, because they might after 4 hours they might call you to do your stuff. And it's trying to be focused and ready to go the whole time. And the other thing is when you're maybe sitting in the green room with the main cast and they've got big scenes, and you're maybe waiting for 8 hours. And it's to try and not distract anybody else from their focus, if that makes sense. So not to be chatting because you're maybe bored, you've been waiting for a long time. It's about remaining focused on what you may be asked to do. I suppose it's a bit like a firefighter. If the alarm goes, you need to jump into action, kind of. And I think that's it. And one of the big things is not take, everybody there is doing a job. And it's to make sure that you don't distract anybody or take away from anybody else's job as much as do yours. And that's on a personal level because of this it being a smaller role. So there's some days where you've only got 3 lines or 8 lines or something, and you're just kind of waiting about until it suits the team to do that scene. So you've got to kind of be ready to go in at any point. You can't really switch off. If you've got an emotional scene, you're kind of going, right, I need to make sure that emotion and that that understanding is still within me physically and emotionally. Because the last thing I want to do is be sitting on my phone all day, and then they say, right, Scott, you're in for that emotional Kincaid death scene, and I'm going, oh, sugar, I'm not ready, I'm not prepared. That's not the thing you want to do. So you kind of have to sometimes maintain a state for quite a long time in case you're going into it, So yeah, that's sometimes as challenging as anything.
Yeah. What was one of the highlights of being on Outlander?
Just being on the show was a total gift. I was very fortunate that I got to watch some amazing actors act, and I get to watch is what I mean is that I maybe had 2 lines in a scene. I'll give you an example of the scene where Claire and Jamie murder Dougal. You know the scene I'm talking about? Claire and Jamie, they wrestle Dougal down and they stab him to death, right?
Yep.
In that scene, 2 seconds before that scene takes place, my character opens up the door and says, "My laird, you're wanted on the battlefield." I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
I open the door, and I say, "You're needed?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm on my way." So basically, that whole scene was run in sequence as one scene. So obviously, when they were doing the fight scene and they were coordinating it and practicing it, I was in the room. So I was just kind of standing in the corner. And I watched the whole process of how the actors prepared, how they got focused, the fun that they had in playing with it as well. The fight scene that had been coordinated with Dougal and Jamie, and then Claire's involvement, and the giggles and fun that they had as well while making it and while creating it, and how the directors worked with it. So I kind of was like a fly on the wall getting to watch all this. And then obviously, when they shout action, I've got my nice wee scene before it, and then it just runs on from it. The funny thing with that is that, as I said, you kind of need to get things in 1 or 2 takes. I would imagine I never had an issue with that, so I was fortunate. But I'd imagine it'd be a very unforgiving environment if you've only got 4 lines and you're holding up the whole day. I don't think that would go down very well. But the scene that I'm just chatting to you there just now about, I came in and Sam and Kat's characters were doing a scene, and I just had to give the audio line. I just had to say the line. I wasn't on screen. And we must have did it about 20 times. So I just kept coming in, saying my line, and I go, but I'm not even on camera, so I've got my jacket on and I've got a cup of tea in my hand. I'm not on screen, right? So just to come in, say the line, and we must have done it 20 times, and then they said, right, we're turning the camera around. Scott, this is your shot. So I was like, right, fine. So I go outside, I open up the door, and my mouth all of a sudden doesn't work. So it goes, blah, 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 and I said all the wrong things. And the whole room burst out laughing because they'd been there like 20 times in a row. You did it, not a problem. And as soon as that camera's in your face, your whole brain just melts. And thankfully, the second take was bang in the can, and they were happy and they moved on. So you're allowed one, do you know what I mean? But you only want to make a habit of it. And I thought it might have made the bloopers reel, but it didn't make it, which is sometimes a good thing. You know, it immortalised seeing you mess up a line.
Yes.
So,
oh man.
About that scene, one question you'd mentioned is like, you know, you were in there and then you were in the room drinking your cup of tea and everything. Was that like one shot scene, or did they break that scene up into multiple different shots?
I think if I remember correctly, obviously it's like everything. It's a very, very small room, so they do have to change the camera angle, so they flip it, and sometimes they move certain things to make the light better or anything. But it was pretty much kind of coordinated in one big sweeping move that it all happened. But then they would break it down as and when they could get the shots they needed. But it was very much coordinated to be the one performance, if you know what I mean. More stage, if that makes sense, like a stage performance where it runs from start to finish until obviously they go, right, we're turning around on Dougal's entrance at the door. You know, kind of, but when they're doing the wide shot and stuff, it's all in one sequence. They're trying to get it in one shot. So yeah, they can. It depending on, again, who the director is and what they want to do. Some directors love to get a wide shot of it all in one shot, and then they'll do all the close-ups and everything else as well, and then they can chop it together how they see fit. And the cutting room and the editing suite, and there's other things where sometimes there's one scene that seems very simple and straightforward through, and they chop it to pieces for whatever reason. I always remember there was a scene with it was actually my last day on set. It was the scene where Murtagh rides back and he says that the princess got lost in the dark, and they're not going to Culloden Moor anymore. So he said that they'll have the battle at Culloden Moor tomorrow, and the guy that was on the horse, I think it was the Duke he was playing, and it was one that it started off as one clean scene, and then they started dicing it up, and they actually started giving Sam took some of his lines and Murtagh took some of his lines, and they totally changed it about. So things like that are interesting to watch as well, you know, because maybe one day you'll be the actor and they're saying, right, we're going to dice this up, we're going to take one of your lines off. We've now decided that now that we can see it all stood up, we want to give that line to that actor. Wow. You know, so yeah, things like that happen on set, which are kind of interesting and worth watching. And again, I was very fortunate that in some of the scenes, I just had a couple of lines which got you entrance into the scene. You could get to watch an awful lot, and then obviously they flip the camera around on you, you do your couple of lines, and then you toddle off back to your trailer.
To be locked away until you need it again. Yes. So I heard that you actually have a funny story about Roman, who played Fergus.
I have a very, very funny story. I try to keep it short because it's such a wonderful story. It took place over a number of days, and it was kind of not intentional. So I'll try and be as short as I can with it. It's known as the fireman story. Okay. Now I'll tell you how this came about. I was sitting in the makeup chair one day, and one of the girls said to me, "Scott, are you a fireman?" And I said, "No, I'm not a fireman." Who said I'm a fireman? And they said, "Oh, somebody said one of the guys that's, you know, one of the newer guys is a fireman." And I went, "No, it's not me." What it turned out was that the makeup team were reading the script, and my character carries Kincaid's dead body into the room in his arms. And I think one of the makeup artists says, "I don't think that guy Scott's going to be able to carry that guy Gregor, because Gregor's a bit of a big boy." So that was them sussing me out. And someone says, "I think one of the boys is a fireman, maybe it's Scott." So they're sussing me out, and I said, "No, I'm not a fireman." So from that point on, every day on set, the makeup team would call me Mr. Fireman. So they'd say, "Hey, Mr. Fireman, how's your hose today?" Right? "Hey, Mr. Fireman, you know, have you caught any tree and rescued any cats from trees?" All this sort of stuff. Every day it was going on. And one day I was sitting with Roman, and it was just kind of another day where you're sitting in the green room for hours and hours and hours. And obviously Roman's, you know, he's only a kid, you know, he's a young lad, so you know, kind of he's got his head in his computer game or whatever he's got in his hand. And I was sitting one day, and the makeup team walked past, and the girl said to me, "Hey, Mr. Fireman." Now, by this time, the joke had worn really thin, so I didn't, you know, I just say, "Hey, how you doing?" Right, that was what I said. So Roman lifts his head up from his computer game, his eyes lit up, and he goes, "Are you a fireman?" And I thought, well, we've got time to kill, haven't we? I mean, we're bored here, there's nothing else going on, why not? You know, so I said, "Yeah, Roman, I'm a fireman." And he's like, "Wow, this is amazing." and he's saying, "Oh wow," he says, "So how long have you been a fireman?" And I'm like, well, 8 years. Right? I don't know where that came from. 8 years. And he goes, "Oh wow." He said, "That's amazing and stuff." He says, "So you do acting and you're a fireman?" I said, "Yeah, you get good days off as a fireman and stuff, right?" When someone shouts, "Roman Scott on set," right? So that was the end of that, and I never thought anything of it till about 2 days later. I'm sitting again, and it ends up with Roman and I just waiting to do something. And we're bored again, waiting for a few hours. And I said to Roman, "Roman, do you want me to tell you a wee bit about when I was a fireman? One of the things that happened to me?" He's like, "Oh, yes." He puts his computer game down. He's like, yeah, I want to hear. I says, "Okay." I said, "So, well, one day," I said, "there was a huge fire. It was in a high-rise building. So this high-rise building, about 22 stories high, and the second top floor was ablaze in fire." I said, "So we arrived at the scene. We quickly realised that we couldn't get up to there's a woman at the top with a baby in the top floor. We couldn't get up the stairs to her because the second top floor was on fire, and our ladders couldn't go past the fire to get above her. So we were really stuck in a tough situation." I said, "Do you know the Arsenal soccer goalkeeper? He's a soccer player, the Arsenal goalkeeper, Peter Cech. And he wears a funny hat, the goalkeeper, if there's any soccer fans out there." So Roman's like, yeah, I know the guy. I said, "Well, he was walking past, and he says to us, he says, it might sound like a silly idea," he said, "but if you want, tell the girl to throw down the baby and I'll be able to catch it. I'm the Arsenal goalkeeper. I'm world famous. I'll catch the baby." So we dismissed it as a silly idea that we didn't give a second thought to. But as the fire was getting higher and higher and the woman's getting more and more desperate, we realised we couldn't help her otherwise. And so we said to the woman, said, "Ma'am, we've got Peter Cech here. He's the Arsenal goalkeeper. If you throw down your baby, he'll catch it." And she was saying, "No, I'm not throwing my baby off a burning building. No way." And the Arsenal goalkeeper, Peter Cech, says to us, "Could I speak to him?" So we said, yeah, on you go. So he says, Ma'am, my name's Peter Cech. I'm a soccer player. I'm the Arsenal goalkeeper. If you throw down your baby, I promise you I will catch the baby." All right? So the flames are getting higher. The woman's getting more and more desperate. And eventually she succumbs and she says, "I'm going to throw the baby down." So she throws the baby off the building. This giant of a man, Peter Cech, he's 6'7". His hands like the size of, kind of a giant hand. And he runs across the street in slow motion. He leaps up into the air with his huge hands. He catches the baby. He bounces it twice and kicks it. And Roman's face, his eyes were popping out of his head, his mouth was open, and he's like, "What?" And I was rolling about, eating the carpet. I was in tears rolling down my eyes because he bought the whole thing. And what I try to say to folk is the only reason that he didn't go, "Nah, you're pulling my leg," is because it wasn't me that told him I was a fireman. It was someone else.
Yes.
That makeup artist set the whole thing up. She said, "Hey, Mr. Fireman." I didn't tell him I was a fireman. Someone else told him, and he said, "Oh, you're a fireman?" I was like, "Yeah." So like any story I told him he was going to believe.
Oh.
So yeah, that's the fireman story. So the nice thing, I was rolling about laughing. He was not impressed. He was not happy, and he kept saying to me, he's like, "You're not funny. You're not funny." And I was like, "I'm the funniest guy you've ever met, Roman." I was laughing my head off, and he said, "I don't like Scottish people. English people are funnier." And I was howling my head off. So from then on, anytime anybody was in the green room, I kept saying, "Roman, why don't you tell the fireman story?" And he's like, "Shut up." So.
That is amazing. That's a great story. That is a great
that's
story.
The fireman story. So I hope I didn't take too long to tell it. But
No, it's perfect.
If I'm telling you in person, I can take half an hour to set that whole thing up.
Scott, I could listen to you tell that story for hours and hours.
Yes.
So please don't worry about it.
Perfect. Well, thank you. And this was really great. Thanks for taking the time to have this conversation.
Where can people find you? Online, or how can we help support the Regal Theatre for you?
The Regal Theatre has got a lovely website that Fraser Murdoch, who worked on Outlander, has designed for us. So it's very much animated. Everything's moving, and that is www.bathgateregal.org. You can find anything about the Bathgate they're on their own Twitter as well. If you want to check that, it's Bathgate Regal. There's a Facebook page, it's just Bathgate Regal Community Theatre. And myself, there only is one. I know that people have got personal profiles and public profiles. Well, I only have the one, and it's just my Twitter, and I think it's Scott J. Kyle #1 on the Twitter, and it's just Scott Kyle on Facebook.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's where you find me. I'm normally there chatting away to people.
Thank you so much, Scott. I just have to tell you, all of our listeners were so excited about your interview. You are incredibly gracious online with your interactions with the fans, and everyone, just fell in love with you and your character. So speaking from the fandom, I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview.
Well, thank you. I owe them so much. So that without them, there wouldn't be a show, and we wouldn't. We'd be struggling along as a wee theatre. And just now we've got new mirrors and a new bar and everything thanks to Outlander. So I'm eternally grateful.
See, what did I tell you? Right?
That story about Roman. Oh my God.
You can't
Mr.
help but laugh.
Firefighter.
I can't. And you could just picture Roman. He's just so precious with his little French accent saying, you Scottish people aren't funny. I can't do it. But you know what I mean? I love it. But
that's what we're
I
going to do.
do not win the accent award. I obviously cannot be in films pretending to be a different person. So
What a great interview. This might be one of my favorite interviews I think that we have ever done.
I would agree. And as he was saying, Scott was very, very open about like his part not being one of the leads, and that he often spent times just hanging out in his trailer waiting, and he might just have like
firemen.
a couple minutes on screen. But it's some of these people, the more lesser known players in Outlander that just can share such unbelievable stories that you don't always get to hear about because we are so focused on Sam and Katrina and Tobias and Ron and Meryl. Like, This was a little hidden gem that...
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, actually, of what Tara said in our previous interview. Like, these guys, Sam, Kat, and Ron, and Tobias, they all have their talking points because they have been coached by stars or by the production studios or whatever. They've been coached to talk about certain things to get a specific message out. But the beauty of this Gonlander series, and guys like Scott Kyle, is that they're here, they're talking just to talk, and they're here to have a good conversation. And they're also here to let you know about their experience and what they felt was most important about their Outlander experience, right? Mm-hmm. I really feel like these are good, genuine conversations. They're not coached. Scott, he's just a regular guy who's in charge. He's like we talked about, he's the manager of the Regal Theater. And here he's talking about Outlander, and he's so grateful. You can tell how thankful he is about being part of this crew and this cast and having all the benefits that it affords him for the Regal Theater, right? Yeah. It makes perfect sense. And that's why I really enjoyed this genuine conversation with Scott.
You know what just makes me sad, though, is Scott is kicking off our episodes with the Gonlander theme. Now, Gonlander means that they are no longer on Outlander, guys. And there was a bunch of us who were like, maybe Ross survives Culloden. Maybe we'll still see him. And
I got a feeling that I don't think he does. I'm not going to lie.
What I would love is just for like someone to have a ponytail marching off in the distance when we come back to season 3, so it could have hope that maybe Ross's character lived, and they just didn't need to have Scott come on over, and they were just like, that ponytail gives you hope.
I seen that wig before.
I know that wig because it didn't fit Scott to begin with, so some other guy can wear it. So yeah, this is the beginning of our Gonlander. So Gonlander is going to be a series of interviews with people who are no longer on the show and yet have awesome insight, just like Scott gave today.
We can't tell you about the next one quite yet, but it will be coming very soon. And I think you're going to be pretty pleased with who it is and what they represent. So I'm not going to lie, it's kind of a big deal. It's just kind of a big deal. That's all I'm going to say. My love, are you ready to close out the show and move on?
Yes.
All right, let's do it.
We want to thank you all so much for listening to the latest episode. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All of our handles there are the same. It's OutlanderCast. And I also want to welcome you to join our exclusive Facebook group. It's called the OutlanderCast Clan Gathering. A lot of our insight and questions come from the clan, and it's just such a privilege to have such a tight-knit group of people who really engage in awesome conversations, and we share photos from vacations when people have gone to Scotland. It's a really great group, so I welcome you to come and join us there, and I also welcome you to become a patron of our show. So Blake and I have talked about our babysitter. Producing this show does cost a little money, and it is a lovely hobby of ours, but We would love any and all support.
We gotta pay the bills,
gotta
baby.
Pay the bills. So Patreon is a really cool way to show support for podcasts like ours. You go to Patreon, patreon.com/OutlanderCast, or just click on the support tab at OutlanderCast.com. And there are different ways. You could donate $1 a month, $3, $5, $10, $20, and there's all different rewards for you for each level that you pledge. So it might be a simple thank you. It might actually be that we mention you here on the show, and some of the top levels actually have you being a guest on the show. So really, it's just our way to thank you and help make this possible, because Outlander Cast is a community effort. We really strive for that, making sure that we have listener feedback with the clan gathering. This show is for you guys, and I really just wanted to thank you. So once again, patreon.com/OutlanderCast.
And speaking of the community, I want to also invite you to take a look at the Outlander Cast blog. You can find that at outlandercastblog.com. And there you can see all of the amazing jobs and articles that our writers have written, the amazing job that our editor-in-chief, Ashley Crawley, does. And also, we have a very special article with 10 personal questions with Scott Kyle that is just an Outlander Cast blog exclusive content. So there you'll be able to learn about all his favorite movies, or whether or not he likes haggis, if he drinks a certain kind of beer. The personal questions that if you really like this interview with Scott Kyle, it gets you a chance to know him just a tad bit more, and maybe help him out with the Regal Theater.
And while you're there at the Outlander Cast blog, check out some of the other more recent blog posts. We love the staff writers on the Outlander Cast blog. We actually had 3 new additions recently to the blog. Mm-hmm. It is growing, it is thriving, and it's awesome because it's not just the regular news that you see.
Right.
They've got interesting information on the actors. They have insightful posts about just themes or situations that some of the characters might have gone through. So be sure to check it out, especially, those days when, those Saturday nights at 9 when you say, what am I doing? What am I doing?
I have no social life.
You have a dram and you say, I wish I could see my favorite people on TV right now. Instead, pull up your iPad and head on over to the Outlander Cast blog. And then you can revisit Outlander in a different way through different eyes.
And as always, I do want to call out Ashley and all of the senior writers and Janet, the associate editor, for helping us out with the questions for Scott. Again, we wanted to make sure that we got things that nobody else really had talked about with Scott, and they helped us enormously. So thank you to Ashley and to Janet and the senior writers, Holly and Denise and Anne and everybody that helped us out. Oh my God, we couldn't have done it without you. We never could do it without you. So that's that.
So, ladies and gents, this is the time we close our show. I'm so happy to be talking about Outlander again. But until I talk about Outlander again, I'm going to be talking about the Gilmore Girls. I know we're plugging this show right now because it's coming back on Netflix, and we're really excited about it. You can find our Gilmore Girls podcast by searching You've Been Gilmored.
Or just Gilmore Girls. We're there on iTunes. We're there at Gilmore Girls. And if you really can't get enough of Mary and Blake, check us out on maryandblake.co. It's our brand spanking new website where you can find all of our podcast. And that's it. That's all the blogs, too. That's all I got, kiddo.
Until next time, ladies and gents, I'm Mary Larson.
My name's Blake.
And you've been listening to Outlander Cast.